Hello class, welcome to our lesson today dealing with comparing and ordering. We're going to be looking at fractions, decimals, and percents again today. First thing that we're going to look at is just a warm-up, just dealing with inequalities. So the first one is what you're used to, just a two-step inequality, subtract 2 on both sides and then divide by 3. You want to make sure that your work is looking like this. We want to keep working on showing our work, okay, on paper and even digitally to be able to find some of that. Remember, when you solve an inequality, there's more than one answer. It's x greater than 4. So we graph the solution to show, like, here's 4 and everything greater than that. Remember, open circle for less than, greater than, closed circle if it has equal to. The second one, the key piece, is after you add 5 to both sides, you're going to divide by the coefficient of -5. But when you do that, remember, that's going to flip the sign. And the reasoning is because the negative times another negative would actually make a larger positive. And so you got to flip the sign to make it a bigger negative, or I'm sorry, excuse me, a lower negative. And that would be at -11, filled in circle because it has equal to, and then less than goes arrow to the left. Okay, I want you to take a minute and try these 6 questions. So these 6 questions are just like what your homework was from the other day. Your goal is to figure out which one is larger. You should either make them both fractions, both decimals, both percents, and see which one is larger. So go ahead and take a minute. I'm going to go ahead and put myself off the screen, and then we'll set the timer for 1 minute, and then look at the answers. All right, so for these 6 questions, the key is making sure that you are making the same decimal, percent, or fraction. I tend to not say fraction as much because you got to find common denominators. That's probably a little bit more challenging. Remember, if you have some weird fractions like 5/13, you could just take 5 divided by 13 and find that answer. You could take 7 or 9 divided by 17 to find that answer. Number 3 is a good example of just kind of thinking about a question and understanding it from a logical perspective. 9 over 17 has to be more than half, because if it was half of 17, this would be 8.5. So you know it's higher than a half. And so that's something to think about as you're looking at a question like number 3. Okay, the next question is just a comparison. So it's about number of shots you take on a soccer goal. You make 72%, your sister makes 16 out of 24, and your friend makes 0.67. Okay, who's the best shooter? Now, this is a good example on your homework. If a question is like this, what you shouldn't say is just, you're the best shooter, or your sister, or your friend. Okay, you need to make sure that you explain why that's the case. Anytime a question says explain, mathematically that means you can explain things with numbers, with words, things like that, showing your work of some type. So for example, 72% is 0.72, 16 out of 24 is 2/3, which is 0.6 repeating, and then 0.67. And so you are the best shooter because yours is 0.72 or 72%, but just make sure that you explain yourself a little bit as you're looking at those scenarios. Okay, the next question says to order the states by population from least to greatest. Really, this is just a disguised ordering question. You don't have to know anything about the states necessarily. It's a good way to kind of incorporate some social studies work about knowing where the states are. You'll notice I just made everything a percent, so 0.03, move the decimal 2 spots to the right, 3%. 1 out of 25 is 4 out of 100, which would be 4%. 1 out of 50 is 2 out of 100, which is 2%. In California, move it over twice for 12%. And then just least to greatest, so Washington, then Michigan, Ohio, New York, and California. You'll notice I use the postal abbreviations here to save myself a little bit of time. So feel free to shortcut some of your words if you're trying to write everything out from least to greatest. That could save you a little bit of time too. Okay, the next question and style is a table format. And what it is it's a table that has a fraction or a decimal or percent, and you kind of just find all the versions. This is a common type of question that you'll see in a lot of math classes, especially when talking about these types of scenarios. So you want to make sure that you understand the relationship between 1/20th and making it a decimal and making it a percent. 59%, for example, is 0.59, which would be 59 over 100. 12% goes with 0.12, and that came from by taking 3 over 25 and multiplying by 4. So just making sure that you can understand this type of table. If you have any questions about why one goes with the other, then we can talk about that. Another thing that I haven't listed here, but you want to make sure you answer the question. Okay, you fill in the table if needed, and then list the counties from least to greatest. I always find this question very interesting because this is the counties in Rhode Island, and there's 5 counties in all of Rhode Island, and over half the population is in Providence County. Providence is the capital of Rhode Island. Okay, but over half of the population is in just this one county. That's kind of staggering if you think about it from the perspective of population of each county. Okay, this next question I kind of left blank here, except for I filled in enough that you can solve the whole table. My recommendation is take a picture of this, or you could write it down if you want. It takes a while to write down. So you could take a picture of this. Try this one at a later time to make sure that you understand how to fill in a table like this. Okay, you'll probably see something like this in the future, so you want to make sure that you understand how to plug the pieces in appropriately. Next question says to find a percent between 25% and 40%. So just pick a number between 25 and 40. I pick 32%. And it says write the equivalent fraction in decimal. I tend to do the decimal first just because it's moved the decimal back 2 spots, and that's 0.32. And then 32% is 32 out of 100. Remember, you always simplify your fractions when it comes to fraction and simplifying them. So anytime you see a fraction, double check to make sure, oh, can that divide by 2 or 4 or maybe a 3? Don't forget your divisibility rule for 3 is add the numbers up and see if that's divisible by 3. There's lots of different options for that, but you have to make sure that you pay attention to simplifying the fraction at all times. Okay, your homework today, numbers 1 through 3, 11 through 15, and 18 through 29. Make sure you work on, do I understand how to explain myself? Some of you are still struggling with that on test situations. Okay, you can get an answer, but you don't know how to write it out, okay, or explain. Okay, that might be something to practice to make sure for the next test. Have a good day, everyone.